It's time for the Saturday Sports Countdown with Brett Pritchard, Randy Lee, and Luke Robinson. Auburn, Alabama, around the SEC, and around the nation. This is the Saturday Sports Countdown. To be a part of the program, call
Scott, can you hear me? Scott,
Yes. Check. I'm ready. We're here. Can you hear me?
Okay, y'all are responding to Saturday Sports Countdown. All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1, all yours.
Hey, everybody, and welcome into Saturday Sports Countdown. Luke Robinson along with Scott Hardy here at JR's Sports Bar and Grill. Come on out and join us today on Alabama Street. Don't let the road construction get you down. You can get through all that. We had to get through it to get here. You can get through it to come over here and eat. So come over and join us at JR's Sports Bar and Grill. I want to thank everybody here at JR's for sponsoring Sports Blitz, all things Sports Blitz for so long. And, Scott, it's back. I mean, I feel like there's like the clouds have parted. The light is shining directly on us now. Football season is here, and last night Benjamin Russell got off to a great start.
Yeah, they defeat BC Rain 33-14, and as you said, it's glad to have high school football back, or football in general back. I know people can stop pretending like they like baseball, and so they can go ahead and start back watching some Wildcat football, especially locally. And as you said, they win 33-14, and a somewhat sluggish start to the game, but that's kind of what you would expect game one. But after some major adjustments in the second half, or during halftime, the second half, they really came out and started to have their way with BC Rain, which most people thought that they would.
Yeah, I tell you, it sounded like I followed the game on Twitter. Obviously, I was calling the Champions Challenge game, Madison Academy taking on Leeds, a battle of two number one ranked teams, one in 4A, one in 3A, and a rematch from last year. And I'll go into that game in depth. I've got a lot of thoughts, and there'll be some Auburn fans out there and SEC fans in general very interested in this game because there were prospects all over the place, and two guys, one committed to Tennessee, one committed to Auburn, that you'll want to hear about. And they were showcased at Crampton Bowl. So I had to follow this game on Twitter, essentially. And it sounded like, and again, it's always dangerous when you try and read in too much via text or Twitter or Facebook or whatever, that Benjamin Russell, okay, they win and they win big, but it wasn't exactly a pristine performance. There are some things to work on out there.
Oh, most definitely. I think especially early on the offensive side of the ball, we weren't really able to get a lot of drives going or sustainable drives. I mean, we scored the second play of the game, and I think there was like a 5-play drive right after that. So they had 14 points. It was 14-6 at the half, which is similar to last year's game. It was game one, and they were kind of sluggish there. But to me, it didn't seem like they were. BC Rain kind of was the opponent that they knew that they could beat, and early on it kind of looked like that. But Coach Horn and Coach Tal Morrison in particular, the offensive line coach, kind of had some words for them for halftime. And when they came out, you saw a completely different team. But the story of the night for me had to be Tyree Gray. Has over 160-yard rushing on the night. He did have a touchdown pass as well to Orlando Henderson, but he's going to be a dynamic player and somebody who is going to be able to change things for the Wildcats. He's just got so much speed. As I said, he breaks an 86-yard touchdown on the second play of the game. And when I say he left the safety, he left the safety. So, I mean, one of your more athletic players on the field, he left them. So I think if Tyree continues to be able to mature on the quarterback position, especially passing the ball, the Wildcats are going to have an opportunity to really make a run this season.
As you mentioned, Tyree Gray, 163 yards on 10 carries, so a whopping 16.3 yards per carry average, bolstered obviously by the 86-yard touchdown run. Anybody else stand out to you? It sounded like Sean Rape had a good game, back kicking. Some people were concerned perhaps he won't be ready for game one, and he comes in and does a fantastic job. But was there anybody else offensively or defensively that stood out to you?
Well, I will say that there were some newcomers to the field, as well as you get a senior linebacker back, A.J. Russell, who's battled injuries the last couple of seasons. He hasn't been able to complete a full season, but he's going to be somebody that mans the post, taking over for the Sturdivant boys in the middle. He, along with Benjamin Hendricks, a sophomore who I'm telling you is going to be an impressive player. He just gets it. He's very intelligent out there. And he battled some cramps, as a lot of people did last night, so he didn't really get the full effect of what he'll be able to do. But I think that along with him and some of the people on the offensive line, and a mainstay on the offensive line for the last several years has been Daniel Bland. Mm-hmm. And anybody that has a chance to watch the replay, in the second half of the game, he took it over, and he, along with the rest of the offensive line, really started to take control. And you could start to see that BC Rain was kind of getting enough of that ground and pound. they kind of stayed in it early on. But it's going to be and then again, it was game one. So if you talk to the coaches, they were not, it was game one, and you could tell the plays were kind of dumbed down. So I think they were saving some of what they want to do for this big matchup they have coming up against Central Laclay next week.
Yeah, of course, you're right. That Central Laclay matchup versus BRHS this next weekend is going to be absolutely huge. Obviously, there's some personal ties there for Coach Danny Horn, so that'll be a really interesting game. But going back to Ben Hendricks just for a second, Benjamin Hendricks, I'd gotten word that he would start. Did he ended up starting on defense? And that's huge. A sophomore, a guy that's, my goodness, I mean, he's won weightlifting championships nationwide. I mean, he holds world records even, perhaps. I mean, I may be talking out of school a little bit there, but I believe he does. For his size and his age group, just a really strong kid, a very good kid. I happen to know him pretty well, and I can tell you there's nobody nicer and nobody smarter out there, and he knows football. And I think he's going to have a bright future. This is going to be the kind of guy that I don't know that the next level is in his future necessarily, just some other size limitations perhaps. But high school-wise, he has the potential to be one of those great ones that 10 years from now, 15 years from now, you go, guys, this team just had a Benjamin Hendricks. And I feel like that's something that he can bring to the table because he's so strong, he's so dedicated to the sport. And so I expect to see a lot of big things out of him this year. And you don't see a lot of sophomores starting for Danny Horn coach teams, do you?
Yeah, and that was the thing. They had an injury to Jordan Slaughter, who was going to play linebacker, and then they moved Tay Edwards to the defensive line. Well, once that happened, they moved Tay they moved Tay from linebacker back to the defensive line, and that opened up a position for Benjamin Hendricks. And you can still tell, I mean, he's still young and there's some things he's going to work on, but furtherwise is having a knack for getting to the ball and just his intensity level. And I think that goes for the rest of the defense as well. There's a senior linebacker now, Chase Burton, who was one of the leading rushers for the team last year, over 1,000 yards for him. But they moved him to the defensive side of the ball, so that gave them a little luxury for somebody like a N'Kobe Maxwell to come in, who are a lot of people around the community are going to want to know this guy's name. Although he didn't necessarily have a big game last night, I think you could just tell the offense was just kind of dumbed down, and they were just trying to figure out kind of who can play here and who can't. But I for as a game one overall evaluation, I think the Wildcats did about as good as you could do for game one.
Again, Benjamin Russell wins 33-14 over BC Rain, and they have a monster game next week against Central of Clay County. Let's run down some other scores of local interest. First of all, it was Thompson defeating Wetumpka 37-13. Thorsby took care of Holtville 43-14. Reeltown, in a game that apparently did count, 27, Childersburg 14. And let me go back and explain myself a little bit here. Not all of these games are going to count in the records. Now, Benjamin Russell's game, that counted. The Reeltown game, that's going to count. Apparently, the Dadeville game was a jamboree-style game, so Dadeville got the win last night, but that game does not count in the standings. Jeff Davis, 40, LaFour, 14, Tallahassee, 26, Notasulga, nothing, Auburn, 45, Gaston City, 38 in a shootout. And finally, the game that I went to, Madison Academy, 19, and Leeds, 14. And I wanted to go to that game just for a second. I know it's not so much of local interest in terms of proximity to Alexander City, but I think it is of local interest in terms of Madison Academy has a kid that is committed to Auburn. They've got another kid who is being looked at by Auburn and Alabama on the junior side. Then meanwhile for Leeds, their quarterback plays at Tennessee, or will be playing at Tennessee next season. And Leeds, of course, the defending state champ, as well as Madison Academy. A couple of things that I noticed last night. First of all, the running backs. Malik Miller, who is committed to Auburn for Madison Academy, and Trey Nation, the running back, who right now is uncommitted, but it sure sounds like he's going to wind up somewhere like a Louisville. Those two guys were eerily similar. Trey Nation ended up with about 211 yards. I thought he was shiftier. I thought he was a step quicker, and he was very, very strong. Now, Leeds is 4A, so maybe their linemen wore down Madison Academy a little bit, but don't feel sorry for Madison Academy. In fact, I would say they were bigger overall than Leeds was. Meanwhile, Malik Miller, he broke one for about 42 yards, but he doesn't have that top-end speed to make it a touchdown. I think if that's Kerryon Johnson, without a doubt, that's 6 points. But Malik Miller was impressive. He ended up with, I want to say, roughly 120, 130 yards, somewhere in that neighborhood. He looked good at times. At first, he looked better early in the game than he did late in the game. He ended up with a fumble. He had a nice catch, though. Again, I think Auburn's getting a pretty good player. I don't think you're going to see a guy that's going to come in and be a superstar immediately as a true freshman. To Daryl Marshall, the quarterback for Leeds, a guy that's committed to Tennessee, I was really excited about seeing this guy. I talked to his father pregame. His father was a super guy. I can tell you right now, Daryl Marshall has got a great reputation. Man, they just didn't have it last night. And Scott, I'll tell you, it's one of those things where as a broadcaster and a recruitnik like myself, I go to these games and you want to see a kid show out when you hear so much about him. And I'd seen Daryl Marshall play last year in the state championship game, and I thought he looked pretty good. He didn't necessarily wow me that game either, but I saw, okay, there's potential. He was 0 for 4, I want to say, last night, and the passes were just simply not close. He didn't show the ability to get away from the Madison Academy defenders. And I'm not talking about defenders like, let's say if Malik Miller happened to be on defense, which I don't remember seeing him on defense, nobody like that. I'm talking about the smaller defenders he couldn't get away from. And a lot of credit needs to go to Madison Academy. But if you're a guy that's committed to Tennessee, I think you got to make that move. And what really happened in this game, Scott, Madison Academy ended up winning 19-14. The very beginning of the game, Leeds kicks off. Madison Academy gets it, and they don't score, but they go on a drive that takes about 9 minutes off the clock. And we kept looking down the sidelines because we were on the Leeds side, and we'd look down and see, you could tell Marshall and Nation both were just, I mean, it was like ants were crawling on them, that they were so excited to get out there. And by the time they get out there, there's only 2 minutes left to go in the first. And here's a guy, 4-star guy, highly rated, committed to an SEC school. He wants to go out there and show what he's got. And instead of going in there and just playing within himself, he tried to do too much too early. And Nation broke the first run for 19 yards. And then after that, they just went backwards. And they went backwards for a while. They were able to have a nice drive right after halftime, which got them back in the game because it was 13-0 at the half. But, again, it just a game to forget. Now, the good thing about high school, and I say this is a good thing, I don't want this ever to happen in college, but the good thing about high school is that game in the end won't really matter. I think Leeds will keep their number one spot. And I think Madison Academy surely will keep their number one spot. And it doesn't affect anything in the area, et cetera. But I was shocked to see the lack of productivity offensively for Leeds.
Yeah, and that's something, as you said, that they were able to do a lot of last year. But I was really looking for. I know there's some big matchups today in with the Champions Challenge with Carver and Bob Jones, but this was the game that I think the most people were excited about, and especially going in after the game from last season. But again, I don't care about classification. In certain instances, it does matter. But Madison Academy could play with anybody on any classification. I mean, they're that talented, and the way they're able to get players in, I think that they would be able to compete with anybody in the state.
Well, and again, I think Leeds will get it under control. Keith Etheridge is one of the best coaches in the state of Alabama. I'm going to talk a little bit more about this game when we come back, because there's certainly a lot of promise for both of these squads. And really, I don't know that anybody can beat them in either of their classifications. So we'll see what happens. We'll be back in just a minute with more of the Saturday Sports Countdown. Welcome back to the Saturday Sports Countdown. Luke Robinson along with Scott Hardy at JR Sports Bar and Grill. Come on out and join us today. We will certainly be having lunch here very, very soon. We want you to come join us right here on Alabama Street in beautiful downtown Alexander City. Scott, we were talking about the Champions Challenge game last night. Of course, there are two other games today. Glencoe will be taking on Gordo. That's going to be a huge matchup. And the thing I loved about the Champions Challenge, first of all, last night you had star-studded field out there. And I want to get back to some other players here in just a second. But today, you've got Glencoe, who's coached by former Alabama defensive back Lee Osment, who is famous for the longest interception return in the history of Alabama, not by yardage, but by time. It took him – all right, he started the interception in Baton Rouge Saturday night, probably around 9:30, and he finally scored around 8 o'clock in the morning on Sunday. It's the longest interception return I've ever seen. I want to pull it up on YouTube for you. But he's coaching Glencoe right now. And then for Gordo, of course, they have Ben Davis, who's the son of Wayne Davis, maybe the top prospect in the state of Alabama, one of the top linebackers in the country this year. And Randy saw him the other day at media days and said, "My goodness, he's something on the hoof." And then the nightcap is Carver. And, of course, they have Lindell Mack Wilson, one of the other top linebackers in the country. And Carver, of course, has produced Jeremy Johnson, who's a quarterback in Auburn this year, and Sean Deion Hamilton, who will play an expanded role at Alabama this year. And they're going to be playing Bob Jones. And Bob Jones, one of the biggest schools in the state, has talent galore. Levi Randolph, who played basketball at Alabama, I believe it's his brother is on the offensive line. He'll be one of the heavily recruited kids for 2017, I believe it is. So just a lot of kids with a lot of potential out there. So going out to Crampton Bowl, if you're hungry for some high school football. Now, I don't believe any of these games count. They're jamboree-style games. That being said, Crampton Bowl is really, really nice, easy to get to. I was in and out of there last night. It was fantastic. I had a lot of fun. Let me go back to the Champions Challenge game from last night just for a second. And again, I know it sounds like I'm being hard on Daryl Marshall. I don't mean to be. I'm just reporting what I saw, because I do think he's the kind of guy that can certainly bounce back from this, and Leeds is definitely the program that can bounce back from this. He is going to end up going to Tennessee and probably do big things. There's no doubt about it. He's very versatile, so I feel like he will bounce back from this. But I think Leeds is going to make their hay on the back of Trey Nation. I had seen him last year in the state championship game, and I wasn't wowed. But last night, even though the top-end speed isn't necessarily there, the shiftiness, the vision, the feet, he hits the hole angry. That's one thing I thought about Malik Miller and Trey Nation. They both arrive at the line of scrimmage mad. And I think you have to, as a running back, to be a successful running back. And so both of them showed that ability. But I'm going to tell you, the MVP of the game, Madison Academy wins it, and Malik Miller will get a lot of praise. I don't think there's any doubt about it. But I'm going to tell you, the MVP of that game was the quarterback, Grayson Edgman, for Madison Academy. Here's a guy that comes in. He takes over for Blake Coward. For those who don't know, Blake Coward last year led Madison Academy to their third straight state championship game, and he's also the boyfriend of Sadie Robertson of Duck Dynasty fame. So he's got a big name on and off the field. But this Grayson Edgman kid comes in. He grows 3 inches over the summer, rather unexpectedly. He just has his growth spurt. He comes in, and I'm watching him warm up, and I'm thinking, okay, their game plan is going to be handed off to Malik Miller a whole bunch and occasionally let this kid throw, just see what he can do. That wasn't it at all. I mean, at one time he was 6 of 7 for 100 yards plus or minus with a touchdown. He ended up, I think, for 200 yards. He maybe had 3 misses all night long. No interceptions. Incredible poise. Every time it was second and long. I'm going to say Leeds put them in second and long, and by long I mean 11 yards or more. Leeds put them in that situation, let's call it 8 times. Every time Grayson Lambert made a play. Now, one time he threw it to Malik Miller for 26 yards, and it was not just a screen pass. It was a long pass. He hit another kid named Tomlinson for a couple of long passes. He just made the play every single time he needed to make the play. Incredibly poised, only a junior. He's not necessarily SEC ready just yet, but But I can tell you, Scott, it wouldn't shock me at all if he keeps developing this way that you hear his name in recruiting circles.
Yeah, and the thing is, not to say that his talent level isn't there, but when you have such a dynamic player like Malik Miller in the backfield, it allows you to have some fun with your playbook and with your play calling. And so I think that only is going to aid in him being able to be a good quarterback. But I'm really impressed with what everybody's saying about Malik Miller, and I think he can be an instant impact type of player as well.
And on the other side of that, I think I go back to that first long drive that Madison Academy had. That kind of confidence and the fact that Eric Koyu, the coach for Madison Academy, said, I'm going to let you throw. And he showed that confidence in him. And I think that's what really allowed them to win the game and got the momentum on their side, and they never really relinquished it. Meanwhile, conversely, you got Tadero Marshall at Leeds. He goes in, and you go not 3 and out, but 4 and out, because the first play was a 19-yard game by Trey Nation. But you go 4 and out after that. And all of a sudden, you feel like you're playing catch-up. Even though it was scoreless at the time. But you felt like if you're Leeds, my gosh, I mean, they just had this 10-minute drive. I mean, how are we going to stop this? I mean, they got a little fortunate in that they went for it on 4th down and didn't get it. But and that's kind of what happened. The confidence just was never there. And I thought Tadero Marshall would be able to get it maybe on the return game. He returned punts. He returned kickoffs. And it just never materialized. And I think that's something he's going to have to get over eventually as a player. Now, this is a kid who was the quarterback of the state champions last year, so I think he'll do it. But this is one of those games where you've got the whole state looking at you. I mean, I think this was far and away the biggest game in the state last night. So he wanted to go out there and show out. And when you didn't get the opportunity there at the very first, I think it affected his confidence the whole game. But, again, just another great time at Crampton Bowl. We've done this now for Lord knows how many years. I know the Champions Challenge itself has been going on for 10 years. Benjamin Russell was in it a few years ago. Dadeville was in it last year. Were they in it last year or 2 years ago?
2 years ago.
Okay.
So let me ask you that, kind of talking on Madison Academy. Obviously, Hoover is the cream of the crop when it comes to state of Alabama football. But would you say that they're right there as far as, I mean, especially this last 3-year stretch, as one of the more dominant programs, 1A to 7A?
I would. I mean, look, if Hoover's number one, and I mean, statewide, in terms of prominence, obviously they're one of the bigger schools in the state. I don't think there's any doubt Hoover's up there. But if you're going to name your top 4 or 5 programs in the state, I would definitely put Madison Academy in there. There's no question I would put Leeds in there as well. Leeds is cranking out athletes left and right. Now, I was talking to somebody associated with the program yesterday, and they told me that perhaps next year they may have a dip. I mean, I still think they're going to be right there, maybe at Bryant-Denny Stadium, to end this thing for a state championship. But next year they may have a little bit of a dip. They lose, obviously, Nation and Tadero Marshall and a couple of other guys that are big-time seniors. But after that, he said things will probably pick back up again. It's all about senior leadership, I think, in high school generally. If you've got good seniors, and that's what Madison Academy has had for a while now. You know, obviously, Kerryon Johnson last year, they have Malik Miller this year. They're going to have this Edgman kid and Austin Troxell, who is a monstrous tackle and on both offense and defense for Madison Academy, and he's getting looks from just about everybody in the country. He's one of the top 100 players in the country for 2017. So they've just got guys on top of guys. They've got a nice nucleus. Now, Madison Academy is not going to have probably the depth of a lot of other folks. They can't afford quite as many injuries, but their top end talent is as good as anybody's.
Yeah, and that was kind of where I was thinking it. But, again, it's good to see that they're getting the national prominence. You look at last year Leeds and Madison Academy own ESPN, and you have a 3 and 4A school. So I think that's pretty impressive unless you know where they stand.
Well, that's going to wrap us up for High School Talk. If you want to call in and talk about Dadeville or Benjamin Russell or anything like that, feel free. But we're going to go into college football next. We'll be back in just a minute with more of the Saturday Sports Countdown.
Clear.
Is he on? Is Steven on?
All right, guys, 20 seconds to bump.
Is Steven on?
Not yet.
Okay.
Okay, Steven is on now. Steven is holding. That's what we're going.
Welcome back to the Saturday Sports Countdown. Luke Robinson along with Scott Hardy here at JR Sports Bar and Grill. Thanks so much for being with us on your Saturday. I know you've got several choices when it comes to radio. We're glad you chose us.
Absolutely, and we couldn't do it without any of you guys, and we appreciate the support over the last 10 years. It's 10 years and strong. I think that what is that the terminology we're using? I know Brett said it the other day. This will be the 10th year anniversary.
10th anniversary, yep. And we're going through, I wouldn't say we're tediously going through or meticulously going through, but we are going through some of our brighter moments, and we found some funny ones. So we are hoping to do some type of anniversary show at some point. But we haven't necessarily come to that. We hadn't had a lot of time to do it yet. So also want to thank some of our big time sponsors out there. Definitely want to thank Satterfield out there on Highway 280, Satterfield Outdoor Living. Go check them out today. Ashley, everybody over there would be glad to help you if you're interested in a big green egg, any lawn or garden equipment. They would certainly love to help you. So go check out Satterfield Outdoor Living on Highway 280. Let's talk a little bit of college football now. This is what everybody's been waiting on. Next week, look, we'll probably spend a little more time on high school football because every game will count then. But for the moment, I think the question of the day is who is going to be Alabama's starting quarterback? There was some, hand-wringing earlier this week. Jake Coker got hurt. I mean, there was already some hand-wringing from me in terms of Jake Coker, and he hurts his foot. He comes back a little bit earlier than expected. I think he had to. I think he figured out, I better get back out there because this thing's getting really, really tight, and I don't know what direction to go. I think today's scrimmage is going to tell the tale. I said that last week and really believed we'd have some answers by now, and we just don't. And Saban has been pretty candid about this, and he has said, look, it's hard for me to choose. All of you guys, there's no separation, and I don't want to just pick a guy without knowing how's he going to handle that role. So somebody step up and make this happen. Y'all choose this thing for me, and I think that's the way to go with this, but it is scary as an Alabama fan. Again, I'm not incredibly concerned, but I'm more concerned than I was a week ago.
Well, all right, that's what I wanted to ask you. I've been seeing all these articles, and there are a lot of people who say, and to a certain extent it is true, it doesn't really matter who you guys have at quarterback. I mean, obviously, if you're just somebody who cannot mess things up from a turnover standpoint, you've got two great backs in the backfield, and I'm sure that the way that they used Amari Cooper at the receiver position last year, Kenyon Drake will probably step up in some of those roles as well. So I wouldn't be too concerned, but it is getting to the point now where you wouldn't want to get this deep into camp and not have an idea of at least who your number one guy was.
Well, I go back to what I was talking about Madison Academy earlier. I mean, I was thinking, okay, as long as they get Malik Miller and as long as their quarterback doesn't mess up, well, it turns out that guy did a lot of work in the offseason apparently, and he looked good. I mean, he was able to do more than I thought he was going to be able to do. And that's what I want to see in somebody in the scrimmage today. I mean, look, my guy, and I have no problem saying this, my guy's Blake Barnett. I think you take a chance on the true. I know he's a true freshman. I know he's a little bit slight. He's not as big as he's going to be in a year and a half. But you know what? I think you take a chance. I mean, I do. I look at somebody like a Jake Coker, and I think to myself, here's a guy that has had coaching from Jimbo Fisher. Say what you want to about the man, and I've got another story about Jimbo Fisher nobody's going to believe here pretty soon. But Jimbo Fisher is one of the best offensive minds in football. Then he's had a whole year now under Lane Kiffin, who, again, say what you want to about him as a human being. You may not like him, but he's one of the best offensive minds out there going today. He's got weapons all around him. He couldn't beat out a guy who has played practically every position at the University of Alabama last year, and he hadn't been able to clearly beat out four other quarterbacks who haven't shown the ability to take the reins either themselves, and they all have their own deficiencies, one level or another. So I'm beginning to wonder exactly what am I waiting on here? I mean, it's not going to happen. That's my take on the whole thing. So I'm looking at this like, you take somebody like Blake Barnett. David Cornwell, for whatever reason, appears to be in the doghouse. Now, that may not be true. We're not at practice every day. This is my theory, that for whatever reason, there's something not clicking with him either. You talk about Alec Morris. I could live with him, and he may end up being the surprise starter. There's a lot of scuttlebutt out there that Alec Morris is going to be the guy that's going to eventually win this gig. And I'm okay with that. We had a little guy named Greg McElroy did okay, came from the same kind of background as Alec Morris, and Alec Morris probably has a better arm than he does. Or Cooper Bateman. Well, that guy was playing wide receiver not too long ago. So my guy's Blake Barnett. I think he obviously has the most talent of all of them. But we're going to have a guy from Touchdown Alabama on here in just a minute.
He's one of my favorite guests,
Stephen Smith, and he always brings a very vocal opinion. So we're looking forward to this, and we'll talk more about this and some other things when we come back on the Saturday Sports Countdown.
Clear.
Welcome back to the Saturday Country Showdown. I dig it, though. I mean, who is that? Is that Blake Shelton? I don't know.
If you called that, I'm going to be really impressed.
No, I think it is. And I'll tell you why I think it is, because I saw this on Saturday Night Live.
Okay, I'm going to give you a pass.
And I saw that performance on that. I mean, it's not because I dig country music that much, but I think that's – isn't it Blake Shelton?
That was Blake Shelton. So, you know, I'm impressed with your country music.
What is more shocking, that I knew it or you knew it?
Okay, that probably goes on my end. I don't know. I kind of, you know, it's Kowaliga Country. So
you're there a lot. But I'm there a lot, too. I mean, you would think I'd pick up some of this country stuff just by osmosis. I mean, but I don't. I mean, but anyway, regardless. Okay, let's go back to the Alabama quarterback situation. I know we're feverishly working to get Stephen M. Smith on the phone. And if you have not heard this guest of ours, he is a lot of fun to talk to. Man, he's got strong opinions. I was listening to one of his podcasts on the way over here, and he does a fantastic job. He's apparently taking a gig with the Tuscaloosa News to do some high school reporting as well as his other duties. And so really happy for him. He's a good guy, and he's been a guest of Sports Blitz, all things Sports Blitz, for a while now. But going back to the quarterback situation, you know, another thing Saban did this week, he basically said, no more practice reports. Y'all can come watch it. Don't report on it. And report on it at your own peril. If you want to report on it, that's fine. You may not be at the next practice. So, and I don't know what that means. Does that mean that he's tired of reporters being negative about the quarterback situation? Does it mean somebody's hurt and he doesn't want anybody to know? But we'll find that out today at the scrimmage.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I mean, obviously, on my opinion, I think that it more so has to do with the fact that he doesn't know who is going to be the quarterback. And since nobody's really stepped up, it's easier for the media to say that. And getting this late in the season, obviously something has to be going on. So one of the few things that Saban's doing, I actually don't disagree with that, because the media can sometimes tend to twist things and turn things around to where it may not be true at all. So you just want to give them enough time to evaluate everything. But as you said, the scrimmages today, so everybody will pretty much know what's going on after that.
And Saban is incredibly calculated. So I don't think this is just a knee-jerk reaction of Nick Saban saying, I'm mad at the press and y'all can't come in here. I think it's more, my theory is not necessarily as injury related, that he is thinking, okay, I'm going to take the pressure off my quarterbacks by doing something that makes me seem more jerky than I normally am, and everybody's back on me, and they'll quit worrying about the quarterbacks. That's what it feels like, because he is smart that way. I mean, everything about him has a scheme to it. Now, you may not agree with the plan, but that's the way it is. So I don't know. In the end, what would you do if it was at your Alabama? If you're at Alabama's head coach, who would you go?
If it was me, I would probably just go Cooper Bateman, just because.
Cooper Bateman?
Hold on, this is my thing.
Because you want Alabama to lose.
No, but I think Blake Barnett is probably going to be your best option at this point. Coker has, if Coker hadn't been able to get it in a year and a half with the system, almost 2 years now, it's not going to happen. And so I think you just should call it a wash and let that experiment close. But it does look like we have Stephen on the phone. Stephen M. Smith from Touchdown Alabama. He is on the phone with us now. Stephen, are you there?
I'm right here. How's it going, boys?
How are you doing, buddy? Good to hear from you.
I'm doing outstanding. I was covering the Hillcrest Opelika game last night. Did not get back until 3 a.m., but I'm pumped and ready to go.
Well, I'm not going to make this another high school segment. We've already covered that some, but Hillcrest does have a pretty formidable running back, I know. I think Opelika ended up winning it late, but talk about Hillcrest running back if you don't mind.
He did. Robinson did a great job. Strong guy in the hole. Really rushed his pad level low. Had some trouble cutting to get into the run lanes last night through the rain and weather conditions and the slipperiness of the field. But a guy that's very hard-nosed, can find his gaps, very, very talented player.
Okay, let's go into Alabama as they got a huge scrimmage today. Obviously, the question on everybody's mind is quarterback. What do you think is going to happen today, Stephen?
It's a never-ending saga, and with the exception of Twilight, and each Twilight ended, the Alabama quarterback conversation continues to evolve. And when I look at Jay Coker, what he has to do today is be able to function when a play breaks down. The more film I study on Jay Coker, when option number 1 or number 2 is taken away from him, he tends to get rattled, He tends to not trust his instincts. He does not check the ball down, and he tries to force the ball into tight windows and sometimes double and or triple coverage. I understand he has the elite NFL arm talent, but with Saban, it's about protecting the defense, protecting that possession, and not being afraid to recognize that if my number one or number two is not there, check the ball down to a Derrick Henry. If I've got some mobility, pull the ball down, pick up 4 to 5 yards, get out of bounds, protect your body, or chuck the ball away and play that next possession. So it's going to be for Jake Coker being able to function when a play breaks down. For Alex Morris, continuing to put the heat on Jake Coker in a sense of Alex Morris is the only quarterback on this roster with a national championship. Let's just take that in for 1 second. He's the only one on this roster that strategically watched A.J. McCarron conduct himself, carry himself in the huddle as a quarterback on and off the field. I go back to that 2013 spring game. Alex Morris, 10 of 18 passing for 141 yards. Really drove the ball well down the field, has a strong arm, probably not an elite arm, but a guy that knows the playbook inside, outside, and sideways. Very high football IQ. The team loves him. Can he continue putting the pressure on Coker? Like Cooper Bateman, he's got some wheels, not as familiar as Blake Sims was, but he's got some footwork. The thing with him is he's going to really have to wow Saban and Kiffin in a sense of he's more than just a holder on special teams. He's more than just a guy that can take a snap, turn the laces away for Adam Griffith to kick a field goal. He's got to come out there and be fundamentally sound, putting the ball in direct spots. So when it comes down to the young guys, Coker, Cornwell, and Barnett, how bad do you want it? More so Cornwell, because to this point, Barnett has completely outplayed him. So for the two young guys, it's how bad do you really want it? Saban has mentioned time and time out that he can't force it, he can't make it happen. I go back, as always, to McCarron and Blake Sims. Those two guys play with an edge, a swagger, and a confidence to them. When they entered that huddle, everybody knew we got a chance to win a football game. When that cat's under center, we got every possible chance in the world to win this. He's got our back, we have his, we can go out there and play some football. And that's the aura that Saban wants the quarterbacks to have, along with the mechanics, have that moxie. When you enter that huddle, those guys know we got a chance.
I'll tell you, Stephen, this quarterback battle has come full circle for me. I mean, everybody just assumed it was going to be Jake Coker, that the light would come on for him and he would take command of this thing. Well, when that didn't happen, they thought it'd be David Cornwell. At this point, it seems like he's in the doghouse. Then they thought, okay, what about Alec Morris or Cooper Bateman? Well, Cooper Bateman was at wide receiver not too long ago, and Alec Morris never really took control either, even though he's been pretty sure and steady. Then everybody was raving about Blake Barnett. He goes out in the scrimmage last week and throws 3 picks, and that scares everybody off. So we've come back around to Jake Coker again. But at this point, I'm beginning to wonder if I don't want the starter to be Alec Morris or Blake Barnett. I'm on Team Barnett. I think you take a chance with the youngster. I think he's got the most talent of any of them, and I think that you let him be there on a learning curve. And what better team to have a learning curve on than a team that may have the best front seven since Nick Saban's been there?
And I agree with you with that. And it all goes back to processing everything on the field, surveying the defense, not avoiding the mistakes on the field, is what I'm trying to say. That's what it all goes back to. Using checkdowns, not being afraid to throw the ball away, and also surveying the field, dictating the defense. If you feel nervous, you hand that ball with Derrick Henry, you hand the ball with Damian Harris, who's starting to really emerge in fall camp. But read your keys, look at them, look at the sidelines and see what Lane Kiffin is trying to tell you. But ultimately, protect your defense, make the right call, and in that huddle with some confidence to you. Because just like players can pick up confidence, they can also smell fear. And if you come in that huddle with any type of fear in your heart or in your mind, they can pick it up. So whoever is under center, carry yourself with the confidence, knowing that either I'm going to have the arm talent to make the play, or pull a Greg McElroy, I'm going to have the right mental process to make the play.
Well, Stephen, as you're talking about the play of the quarterback and who ultimately may win it, the thing that I think is going to be the biggest factor for them, outside of obviously a great running back in Henry and the playmaker you have in Drake, but Kiffin has been known for his ability to produce numerous 1,000-yard receivers. So who do you see stepping up ultimately to be able to help the quarterback situation?
I think it's Robert Foster and Ardarius Stewart. Ardarius Stewart, a guy out of Fultondale, Alabama, has a knack for making those acrobatic catches, can tightrope the sideline. Got in a lot of playing time last year, especially against Mississippi State. And a guy that has dynamic speed, can play the slot, can play the X, can blank him out as a deep threat. Love what he brings to the table. Kiffin and Saban both very high on Stewart. And Saban especially wants Stewart to kind of take that leadership role. Chris Black is now back at full speed, but while he was hampered with the ankle, you saw a lot of Ardarius Stewart leading his line through drills and practice. I go over to Robert Foster. He's playing through pain, a sprained MCL in that knee, for a guy that's always had the balance and the body control. Early in his career, needed some consistency where his hands are concerned, has finally gotten that, has become a much more coachable player. So I look at Robert Foster and Ardarius Stewart, it's cock and fire time for those two.
Stephen, thanks so much, man. You bring so much to the table. We appreciate it. You're one of the hardest working men in the state, and we certainly love having you on the show. Come call us again, okay?
Are you kidding me, man? I love this. Thank you, guys.
You have a good day, brother. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks so much, Stephen.
No problem.
That was Stephen Smith, Touchdown Alabama. We're going to take a break here on the Saturday Sports Countdown. We'll be back in just a minute.
Welcome back into the Saturday Sports Countdown, live here in downtown Alexander City at JR Sports Bar and Grill. I know we're giving a little frustration there to our producer in the back, so we're sorry about that. But again, we've been discussing the Alabama quarterback competition, and Stephen M. Smith from Touchdown Alabama just joined us. And as Luke was saying, he's a tremendous guest, a wealth of knowledge. So make sure you check him out on Twitter. He's an excellent writer, and so looking forward to continuing to have him on as many programs as possible.
Well, the thing about Stephen Smith, and I say this about, you can critique guests just like you can critique a player, probably like you can critique radio hosts. But, we have guests on here all the time, and you ask them a question, and they give you one of those 10-second answers or give you some yes, no, or him and haw, and then a lot of you-knows and likes. And I think Stephen Smith, man, he's going to come out and he's going to tell you what he thinks, and he's going to back it up. We also have a lot of guests that come on and they'll tell you what they think, and they don't have anything to back it up. And Stephen Smith knows what he's doing. He goes to practices. He sees things. He's an asset, and we're happy that he calls into the show as frequently as he does. Let's move over to Auburn for a second. Any news from Auburn's practice?
Well, just another day without Duke getting in trouble or being out of the practice field is always a positive. But I think the main thing now, what I'm looking for, is just continuing to see who's going to step up on the running back battle. I think that's going to be – I think you could plug in either person, but I would love to see Javon Robinson end up being the guy who wins it. I'm a big
But why?
Okay, I think he's the
because he was 5-star?
No. I think he's the more complete back. Now, granted, I haven't seen him in any real competition in over 2 years, so that does change things. But I think from every down back, I think he's a little more versatile than Rock Thomas. Now, Rock Thomas could end up being one of the better running backs we've had, but in reality, the running back position for Auburn is kind of similar to me with the quarterback position in Alabama, to where it doesn't really matter who you have back there. The system allows them to produce. I mean, you look at Cap, who goes for 1,600 yards. The year before that, Trey Mason, 2,000. Ben Tate was a 14-yard rusher. So no offense to Ben Tate and those guys, but they're not, top echelon guys, but the system allows them to do well. So I think I do want to see who's going to win the battle. But also I just want to see on the defense side of the ball, especially in the secondary, will we be able to play man defense this season? If we're able to get the pressure on the quarterback, which I think we will be able to with Coward and Lawson, if they're able to do what the practice reports are saying, I think that'll allow us to go to that 3-4 man front that, similar to what Nick Saban runs. So I'm excited to see what we'll be able to do on the defensive side.
Well, my guy's Rock Thomas. I've called him a couple of times back when he was in high school. I just thought he was fabulous. I was upset that Alabama didn't pursue him a lot harder initially, and that's I just said, gosh, I think we're missing an opportunity here. And, of course, Auburn got a commitment from him early, and he stuck with it. And I think Rock Thomas is going to be a star in the SEC. But I was shocked to see I know there's no depth chart yet, but Philip Marshall, who is the homerist homer in Homertown, he came out and essentially said, all right, Javon Robinson hadn't looked great yet. And that is, you can translate that into he hadn't looked good. And so the depth chart appears to be Rock Thomas, Peyton Barber, and then Javon Robinson, which I'm a little shocked by too, because if you saw some of Javon Robinson's junior college film from a couple years ago, I mean, he looked great. Now, last year, I don't think he had maybe as big a year junior college-wise, but maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. I'm a little shocked he hadn't come in and made a little bit more of an impact. But that being said, I've been a Rock Thomas guy, so I'm not shocked at all Rock Thomas is leading this thing. Yeah,
and again, the last thing in my mind when I think about Rock Thomas is the initial play against Alabama and the fumble. That changes everything in the game completely. But again, he's a freshman, and he's going to be a dynamic player. And the thing is, you really won't know about Auburn. Usually it takes about the third or fourth game for Gus to decide who's going to be his workhorse. And so while I do think Rock can be an every down back, I think that Javon Robinson provides a little more from the passing aspect than what Rock Thomas will be able to do.
Well, first of all, I mean, don't blame him on that. I mean, it wasn't the best pass in the world, and it was a stupid play. I mean, it just wasn't a good play. And so, I mean, you set him up for failure. And that's what happened. It's a true freshman out there. Again, I found that play to be curious at best. I mean, because it's not like Rock Thomas was the man at running back then. So why even run that play right then on the first play and set him up for failure? I thought that's exactly what happened. But, again, I feel like Rock Thomas is going to have a big season. After all said and done, I've heard about Peyton Barber for seemingly 10 years now. Javon Robinson's gotten all the hype. I'm a big Kerryon Johnson fan, too. I got to watch him all through high school. But in the end, I think Rock Thomas is going to be the guy that leads Auburn in rushing. I don't think there's much doubt about it.
I think he could be a Kerryon Johnson could be a Kenyon Drake type of player, at least how they use him. Maybe not the same skill set, but I think what he'll be able to do in the offense will be pretty tremendous there. So I offensively, I'm not that concerned. Obviously, you want to see who will be able to step up alongside as the number 2 guy against Duke or with Duke, but there's been multiple guys that they've been kind of rotating in and out. So you could see some major production from a guy like a Melvin Ray, or even hopefully somebody like Ricardo Lewis, who's been there, and hopefully he can be known for something besides the miracle in Jordan Harris. So I'm offensively, I think we'll be fine, except for the offensive line a little bit. Obviously, you got some transition and turnover there, so we'll just see how it goes on there.
We want to hear what you have to say about Alabama or Auburn or any team in the SEC. Give us a call, 256-234-6221, 256-234-6221. I've got a lot of other little neat tidbits out there that are just jumping around Al Gore's internet. First of all, how about this? SEC records since Missouri and Texas A&M have joined the league. Don't you peek? Alabama is 21-3 in the last 3 years. Georgia is 19-5. I'm a little shocked by that. I guess I didn't realize how good Georgia's been over the last. But my point being that they only have been to represent the SEC East once in those, and they're 19-5. That seems, because Missouri's 16-8 since they've been in.
Yeah.
Missouri has the 3rd best record since they've entered the league. Does that shock you a little bit?
Most definitely. Yeah. Okay. I never would have thought that.
LSU at 15-9. South Carolina at 15-9. So LSU and South Carolina have the same record of the last 3 years. That seems ridiculous. A&M at 14-10. Florida at 14-10. And then I'll read you the rest of them when we come back. I'll leave you
2012 inflated a little bit.
Deflated, I think. We'll be back in just a minute more of the Saturday Sports Countdown.
Materials, electrical, and
don't blame
plumbing
them.
supplies. Russell Do It Center stores deliver first-class
How you
service,
supposed to?
top-rate products, and competitive do-it-best pricing.
All right, gentlemen.
Welcome back in at the Saturday Sports Countdown. Luke Robinson along with Scott Hardy. Man, that first hour flew by.
Yeah. Well, when you're having fun, man, time.
Yeah, well, it does when you're having fun. I guess that's how I got to 42 and a half and didn't realize it. Okay, we were talking about SEC records of all 14 teams in the 3 years since A&M and Missouri joined. Alabama at 21-3, Georgia at 19-5. That shocked me a little bit, just the 5. I mean, it feels like Georgia's underachieved a lot more than that. Missouri 16-8, number 3 in the conference. LSU 15-9, South Carolina 15-9, A&M 14-10, Florida 14-10, Mississippi State 13-11, and then Auburn 11-13. Does that shock you a little bit? I mean, because it sounds like they've been much more successful than that.
Well, in reality, you have a mediocre season last season. You finished 7-6, and then
You're 0-8 in 3 years ago.
oh yeah. Oh, these are conference records?
Just conference records.
Conference. Oh, okay. Well, then that changes things. Still, they weren't that good in the conference last year, 0-8 the year before. So really and truly, 2013 is saving them, because if not, they were at the bottom of the list. And so that lets you know exactly what was being dealt with before Auburn. And anyway, I'm not going to go get on that because we had a conversation. I want to ask you later about previous Auburn coaches and who had the better impact. But I'm a little shocked to see that, but I was a little impressed to see how high A&M was, because they've been kind of right around in there. They've had I think their record doesn't indicate how successful they've been for the Wise. It's how they've pretty much demolished Texas from the point to where this putting more pressure on them. They are the state of Texas now, it seems, and them, and even maybe Baylor and TCU too. So, I mean, it's just one of those things now where Alabama's still the cream of the crop in the SEC, as much as I hate to say that. But
perception is everything. And I think I've said this for months now, that people can't get out of their heads that A&M got blistered by Alabama 59-0. And they think, okay, well, they're just not going to be good. And that's why A&M is ranked so much more low than Auburn is. Auburn, they have the exact same scenarios, and A&M gets Auburn at home and has the easier schedule, yet Auburn is ranked number 9, number 3, lowest I've seen is 14 from Phil Steele. A&M, I haven't seen them. Now, one ESPN reporter did go out on a limb and say they win the West. But for the most part, I've seen A&M either not in the top 25 or just in it. And their scenarios are very, very similar. And so I find that just odd. It is all about perception, because, see, people, you look at somebody like Gus Malzahn kind of is still living off right now, the national championship run, because it was magical and fun and everybody had a good time with it. So you think about ranking them, you're like, well, I keep remembering that. So you're going to rank them a little bit higher. And they forget that last year Auburn lost their last 4 games to Division I opponents.
Well, all right, this is my whole thing on the Auburn Texas A&M side. And I've been yelling it since they came into the conference, and especially with Gus coming. I thought that they were very similar programs. They're recruiting the same type of players, and the coaches are very similar. However, I think what Auburn has been able to do for the longevity period of it, even going back to 2009 when you have Gus Malzahn there. So I think that offense mainstay is going to be there. But I think Texas A&M legitimately could be a 10 or 11 win team and compete with Alabama and Auburn for the SEC championship. And so if that happens, I think that changes everything, because Texas A&M just needs some type of success to be able to validate the fact, A, that they're here, and then 2, the big contract that Kevin Sumlin got, because as much money as they're put into the program, they're going to want some type of results at some point. And as you were saying about 2013 with Auburn, I think the same thing's being said for 2012 with Johnny Manziel. I think there was so much that happened during his tenure there that they still get a little more credibility than probably what they deserve. But I think that John Chavis is the same type of situation that as Muschamp, and I don't know who's 1A, 1B, but I think what their impact is going to be equally as impressive for both sides.
Yeah, I think that game is going to be crucial for both those teams when Auburn travels to College Station. But there's, again, perception is everything. And you go back to Gene Chizik. His 2-year record to start his career at Auburn is actually better than Gus Malzahn's. But, again, Gus Malzahn riding the wave a little bit. He should be. I mean, look, they've got guys, 5 stars coming in. They've got I get it. This is not downplaying him. I'm just saying, it's funny when you start looking at some of these numbers and just take out any biases and forget miracles, catches, and kick sixes and things. All of a sudden, things look a little bit different. And so I go back to the Texas A&M thing. I personally would have Auburn ranked higher than Texas A&M. There's no doubt in my mind to start the season, even though in the paper I predicted Texas A&M to finish second in the West behind Alabama and then Auburn to finish third. And the tiebreaker to me was A&M getting Auburn at home. I mean, and A&M's going to break through and beat one of those teams. I don't think they've beaten LSU yet. I think they can beat LSU this year. I think LSU is headed for some trouble. They lost Jalen Mills, a defensive back, their best defensive back, and he won't be available for the Auburn game. I think that's going to be a big issue for the Bengal Tigers. And I think A&M may take LSU's spot. And so all of a sudden, then it's a 3-team race every year, Alabama, A&M, and LSU. Now, obviously, Ole Miss and Mississippi State, they have a little something to say about it, but they're not going to be the perennial powers like those three.
Yeah, and that's the thing with schools like Ole Miss and Mississippi State. While Ole Miss is doing a better job of recruiting than Mississippi State, I still think that they're one of those schools that maybe every recruiting class they have an opportunity to be able to make a run similar to what Mississippi State did last season, because when you have so many seniors and upperclassmen, then that allows you to be able to kind of compete at a different level. But you brought up Gene Chizik, and that'll just be an entryway to what my question was. Andy and I were talking between breaks on Sports Call, and who do you think had the best tenure at Auburn or most impactful, Terry Bowden, Tuberville, or Gene Chizik?
Oh, wow. That is interesting. I'll tell you, Tuberville's is underappreciated, first of all. I think Auburn fans have kind of fallen back in love with him a little bit now that they've had a little time. It's like having a breakup and you needed a couple years to get over it, and now you can be friends again. That's what I feel like Tuberville and Auburn. Terry Bowden definitely not in the mix. I don't think people even like him now. I don't even know that he can go to Auburn, frankly. And Chizik, kind of the same way. I think.
Does the championship override it?
No, and I'm going to tell you why. Because I think Auburn folks were told back when Chizik was even good that guy's pretty goofy. And this isn't going to work out. And Auburn fans are like, no, it's going to work out. It was working out right now. And it's not just Cam Newton. It's a lot of other people in there doing stuff too. And then the next year they go 8-5, almost lose to Utah State. And the next year, the absolute bottom falls out, and they're like, okay, he's pretty goofy, and this isn't working out. And they felt bad. I think Auburn fans feel bad for defending him. Look, trust me, I've been there. The whole Dubose thing, I was told he was a little bit slobbish, a little bit. It's not going to work out. He's not organized enough, and he's got his mind on other things. I was like, well, he just won an SEC championship. No, Sean Alexander and Chris Samuels won an SEC championship, and then the bottom fell out for Dubose. So you can get into that posture of defending a guy thinking it's all him, and it ain't him at all. And I think that's what it was with Gene Chizik. I would say the thing, if who do you like more? I'm going to go Tuberville. Who's the most impactful? I might have to go Chizik simply because he was there while Cam Newton was there. That's it. I mean, if he wasn't there when Cam Newton was there, or if Cam Newton wasn't there at all, Chizik wouldn't even be in this conversation. But because he was there for the 14-0 season and you win a national championship, first one in 50 years or 60 years or whatever it was, then I think maybe it is him, but it pains me to say that because there are very few awards I would give Gene Chizik. I might have to give him this one.
Well, see, that's kind of where I fall into it, and I'm one of those people. I look at the consistency of what you're able to do for a program, and I understand how tough it is to win a national championship, and I know we're up against the break, but I'll look at more what Tuberville was able to do for such a long stretch, and then the stretch from 2002 to 2006 was probably some of the most talent we've ever had, and then you include the 6 in a row against Alabama, and that probably gives him the edge for some Auburn fans in particular.
We're going to go to break. We'll be back in just a minute with more of the Saturday Sports Countdown.
This segment of Sports Blitz is brought to you by Bice Motors in Alexander City. Brian and his crew offer the latest lines of Dodge, Chrysler, Jeep, and Ram vehicles, as well as the best used inventory around. Guaranteed lowest price. Bice.
All right, buddy, here we go. 3, 2.
Sort of just want to let this one roll.
I mean, it's my favorite one. Daniel always comes through for me in the back with my Bill Withers, so I always appreciate that.
Welcome back to Saturday Sports Countdown, the Quiet Storm. That I do love that song, I tell you. But let's go back a little bit. Let's throw out a few other tidbits. I want to get into some other national stuff, and I definitely want to get into this Football Writers of Association. They came out with their 75th anniversary All-American team. I wanted to get your thoughts on it because had some guys on there I thought should have been on there, guys that I thought shouldn't be on there, some snubs or whatever. I want to get your thoughts on it. But a couple other quick tidbits. First of all, Kirk Herbstreit had a good tweet. Alabama has been preseason number 1 or 2 for 5 straight years. The only team in history with the longest streak is Oklahoma with 6 from 54 to 59. Do you think that streak ends this year? You think Ohio State? I mean, Ohio State's going to be 1. Okay, so who's going to be 2? Is it going to be Bama? Is it going to be Auburn? Is it going to be TCU, Baylor?
I think it's probably Auburn, TCU, USC, Auburn. That's my Final Four for you right there.
I mean, that could be your Final Four. I'm saying, who do you think the AP is going to have?
Oh, AP? Probably Alabama.
At 2 over
Probably.
TCU?
Probably. I think, yeah, because I don't know. It's so weird. I don't really see the need for it. They may just get the Bama bump just because, but they're easily either of those top 5 teams could be filtered around, except for Ohio State. I think clearly Ohio State's the best team.
Ohio State's 1. No argument there. Ricky Town, the 5-star quarterback that committed to USC, was initially committed to Alabama, ends up switching to USC. He leaves before practice really even gets started.
What was
I don't know what the whole story is there, but he's leaving. He apparently had a run-in with the coaches. A lot of issues with UCLA and USC guys here. Snoop Dogg's son left the program. He said he's just going to focus on his film career.
And banned Diddy from practices now.
Yeah, it's crazy. But Ricky Town now is transferring to Arkansas. I think that's a fabulous pickup for Brett Bielema. I'm telling you, I've been saying it for a while. Brett Bielema was an excellent, excellent hire for Arkansas. I think he's going to get them turned around. It's just going to take a little bit longer. I mean, you're not starting out with the same resources as Alabama or Auburn or Florida or LSU. Arkansas is going to take a little longer, and he's going to have them there. He had a little setback with Jonathan Williams, the star running back, being hurt, but I think they're still going to be good this year. You heard anything about this Baylor-Boise State transfer situation?
I haven't seen. I saw some headlines, and I know is Chris Peterson, I know, called out maybe.
Well, let me fill you in. There's a kid named Sam Ukawachu who was asked to leave Boise State, or I mean, it's one of those Cam Newtons where you asked to leave or did you get booted? I don't think that's been determined quite yet. But he wants to go back to Baylor because he's from Texas. He had been at Boise State. Transfers into Baylor, never suits up, hadn't done a practice, hadn't done any of that yet, and he gets accused of sexual assault. He's convicted of it here recently. He's going to do 180 days in jail, it sounds like. But the big question is, and with all the sexual assault stuff out there, there's such a big deal right now in college football and in football in general and in society in general. The Baylor head coach said, hey, we didn't know he was a threat. Well, Chris Peterson, who was the head coach at Boise State at the time, and now the head coach at Washington, says he told Art Briles, hey, this guy's got a sketchy past, and he apparently got in some trouble at Boise State under the same kind of conditions, which the kid denies, but all that testimony was used, et cetera, et cetera. So the question becomes, how much culpability does Baylor have in this, and Art Briles specifically? And is it a he said, she said, you told me this, no, you didn't tell me that? Or is it a situation where Baylor could be in some trouble and lose some money, and could Art Briles lose his job?
I think that now that Baylor is becoming one of the more high-profile teams, that definitely adds more pressure to the situation. But with everything that Alabama went through with their situation there, with the recruiting of the players and let them go or whatnot, I think that he has to. Or if he doesn't, I think it only is because
you mean lose his job?
Yeah. Well, I don't say necessarily lose his job.
The player's gone.
Yeah. No, but I'm just saying I think you have to. Some type of reprimand has to be done. I don't necessarily know that you should fire him, but if this was an SEC school,
that's what bothers me so much about this. You mentioned the Bama bump earlier. Let me tell you what, if this had been Nick Saban, the Bama bump would work in reverse, okay? Because Nick Saban would be eviscerated by everybody saying, we told you, you should have seen it coming. Same thing with Jonathan Taylor. He boots Jonathan Taylor. And guess what? Jonathan Taylor's, now they've dropped all the charges. I mean, and he can't go back to play at Alabama. I mean, and so I think Saban ended up being validated there that, hey, look, let's let this play out a little bit. Well, I was even on the train of Jonathan Taylor should never have been on the team. I get that. I mean, that would have been my argument. But then when he was on the team, at least let it play out somewhat. I mean, this kid, Okawachu, at least they went through the whole process, and now he's going to prison. He had a trial, all those things. So we know he was guilty. They let it play out. But now the question becomes, how much did Baylor know coming into this thing? And that's what can be pretty scary, I think, if you're Art Briles, because he strikes me as a guy who wouldn't mind saying things to be beneficial for him and his school. And I feel like he better have made sure all his T's are crossed and I's are dotted this time. He was a high school
top
coach.
10 coach maybe now?
Art Briles?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I guess I could put a top 10 together for you. I mean, who would you rather have, Art Briles or Dabo Swinney? I think that's a good comparison. Who would you rather have? Dabo Swinney, without question, is a better recruiter.
Well, that's probably a question for you to ask because he's probably the next guy in line to
Swinney,
come down.
no chance. I don't think there's any chance. I really don't, because you talk about going from one end of the spectrum to the other. Now, not saying Sweeney's not a good coach. I just don't think there's a good – and I love Dabo Swinney. I mean, like I said, I've had a lot of personal interaction with him. He's a fantastic human being. It'd be fine with me if he were, but I don't think you can go from Saban to Swinney. I mean, I think that is way too much of a swing. But one other thing I wanted to throw out there here in this quick hitter segment, to pay homage to The Wizard of Oz, which is one of Jimbo Fisher's favorite movies. Jimbo Fisher put a yellow brick road, which is, I think it looks like it's made out of paper, but from the locker room to the practice field. Has he lost his mind?
I mean, Jimbo's got a lot of stuff going on down there. I'm not really sure what's going on with them. And so the funny thing about it, I'm still so high on Florida State. I know everybody's saying with Clemson and what they have because the ACC's down. So it's really just Florida State and Florida State and Clemson, in my opinion. Maybe a sneaky Miami team, maybe Virginia Tech can make a run. But I think Florida State eventually does come on and they make a run, and there'll be another team that competes for a national championship. But Jimbo Fisher is just a weird cat to me. I think he's an excellent coach, but he's a little –
and he's got a lot of things going on in his personal life, obviously, which have affected him. And he's going through a pretty rough divorce. I don't know where it stands right now, but you hear all the rumors and other people being involved with that thing and from his wife's side. And you hear all those. You don't know if any of them are true. You just see what you see on the internet. But it sure sounds like things got pretty rocky over there. And you feel for a guy because here it is, he's the head coach and everybody expects him just to forget all that and just go out and coach a team to another national championship run. Well, it's going to be difficult. Not only did you lose the best quarterback you've had in the school since Charlie Ward probably, but you don't have your backup anymore, which may be a good thing. And Jake Coker, you have a whole new setup going there. You've already booted one other guy for popping a girl in the face, which was all over video. You've had some other guys get in trouble with the law, and you've got a lot on your plate. So while we can kill Jimbo Fisher for a lot of things, I think that the fact that he's been able to keep his sanity this long has been impressive. But this yellow brick road thing may be a signal that the sanity has gone bye-bye now. Yeah,
well, I mean, Tallahassee is like Oz. So, I mean, there's a lot there's just a lot that goes on down there. But I really do like him. He was somebody that I thought was going to be a tremendous hire, and he has been. And I think that as long as he's there, they're going to be a team that's going to always be in the mix for a national championship.
Let's go ahead and go to another break. When we come back, I want to talk about this 75th anniversary FWAA All-American team and get your thoughts on it. I know y'all talked about it on Sports Call, and we can also go into the Mount Rushmore of Alabama and Auburn. Who would you have on your Mount Rushmore, and who would I have? We're going to go ahead and take a break here on the Saturday Sports Countdown. We'll be back in just a minute with more.
And I'm the big box store.
night. People dancing, people laughing, a man selling ice cream, singing Italian songs.
Welcome back to the Saturday Sports Countdown. We're sort of fluctuating between some classic 70s and some soul and some, man, we got it going on over here.
Pretty diverse here at Sports Blitz.
Let's go into this Football Writers Association of America All-American 75th anniversary team. Okay, I know this is something y'all tackled on a sports call this past week, but it's interesting. I think you could debate about this all year long, every single year. The first team, and let's just throw out some big names. If anybody out there wants to ask if somebody made a team, feel free to call us 256-234-6221. But on the first team, the quarterback, this is stands out to me almost immediately. Roger Staubach of Navy. And see, to me, look, I'm just not old enough, so I guess I shouldn't have an opinion, but you're telling me that of all the other quarterbacks, I think you put Tim Tebow there, probably the most decorated quarterback in quite some time, won a couple of championships, Heisman's, all types of other awards, and a good guy. I think you put Tebow in that spot, even though I so infamously said recently that I thought Johnny Manziel was maybe the best player in the SEC in Lord knows how long. Running backs, Archie Griffin and Herschel Walker. Okay, Herschel Walker is undisputed. I don't think anybody's going to have a problem with that. I'll put Barry Sanders there where Archie Griffin is. Now, Archie Griffin won 2 Heismans, but he won them at a time when only a few teams are going to have the Heisman winner. I mean, it's not like Ohio State was probably going to be one of them, or Notre Dame, or, obviously not Alabama, maybe Oklahoma, somebody like that, Nebraska perhaps. But now the game is much more national. And so I'm not saying Archie Griffin wasn't good and doesn't deserve to be on here. I put Barry Sanders there.
All right, just looking at the quarterback situation, I definitely wouldn't have picked Staubach. I think he is one of the greater quarterbacks, but it's so hard to compare, and that's in any sport, but to compare time periods because the quality of players may not have been the same and all of that. But looking at the running back situation, this big Ohio State guy I am, and he is the only person to go back-to-back like that, I can't give it to Archie. I probably would have gone Herschel Walker, and then obviously you'd have to go Barry Sanders. Now, Bo has my vote, but I think
Bo's there on the third team, and you know what? I mean, are you going to put Bo over Archie Griffin? You going to put Bo over Barry Sanders? You going to put Bo over Tony Dorsett? Okay, I could maybe. Tony Dorsett was pretty good. That he's not our generation.
See, you and Randy were making great points when I heard you guys discussing it. And a lot of times, and the conversation has been the last couple of weeks, and it's always going to be, but Herschel versus Bo. And I think you said it best from an athletic standpoint. He probably is. That's Bo, the greatest athlete, or at least one of the top 2 or 3, along with him and probably Deion Sanders, in my opinion. But from a collegiate standpoint of being a college running back, Herschel Walker was what the epitome of it was. So I probably even would go. I don't know. I would even put Dorsett over Bo, but maybe just because of what the numbers were. But
I think they got Bo right. I really do. I think they got him right on the third team, and they have Doak Walker there on the third team as well. I could find some other guys maybe, but I'm going to have to take their word on Doak Walker. Some of the other guys, Alabama guys, for instance, John Hannon, no-brainer first teamer. I mean, he goes down as probably maybe the best offensive lineman in history, and that goes college or pro. So he's in the discussion. I don't think that's and Orlando Pace is up there as well. Of course, he makes first team too. I thought Jerry Rice being on the first team, and I think that is more of a what you did in the pros award, honestly. Frankly, I look at this and this I'm going to get called a homer. You tell me that Jerry Rice did more in college than Amari Cooper did. I mean, Amari Cooper's the best wide receiver in Alabama history, in my opinion, and I don't think that's close. I think Amari Cooper, you could make the argument he's the best wide receiver in SEC history. Ooh. I mean, I think you could make that argument. You think, what if the thing about stats and all this, it gets tricky. What if Amari Cooper were at Baylor?
He would have put up.
He would have had 3,000 yards.
Well, see, that's why I think about that's why I say about Julio. I actually think Julio is a better receiver than Amari Cooper. Now, Amari Cooper does the smaller things a little bit better. His route running is better. He has a little better hands. His hands are better. But I think Julio, from the dynamic standpoint, you could do a little more with him. But clearly, you see what you were able to do with Amari Cooper. So I don't really have a problem with that. But I don't know if he could be the first team.
I'm fine that first team. I would have him on. I would have him as one of the top receivers, top 6.
I probably would. I might have even had Randy Moss over Jerry Rice from the from the collegiate standpoint. Randy Moss
Me
was
too.
an absolute stud at Marshall.
He was
and
awesome.
I mean, I don't think, and it obviously carried over to the pros. So those probably would have been my 1 and 2, Larry Fitz and then Randy Moss.
And I'll tell you something else. A couple other notes. First of all, Derek Thomas on the first team. I think that was a no-brainer. But
He's
Derek
your
Thomas,
favorite player.
he is. He and Palmer are probably my favorite too. But Derek Thomas, to me, has been underappreciated for a long time until now. Like, he gets into the Hall of Fame, obviously posthumously. The way things ended for him were bad, and there were some other bad news things that happened in his personal life. But he was just unbelievably dynamic. Could change a game from the defensive side. I think having Brian Bosworth of Oklahoma on the second team over Leroy Jordan or Chris Spellman or Jack Ham or Jack Youngblood, who are all on the third team linebacker squad, is a joke. I think having Brian Bosworth on this list is a joke.
Yeah, I mean, I know the buys was the buys and all, but I don't really recall him. I mean, I know some of the numbers, but I didn't know he was that great of a linebacker there, but I guess he was.
He feels like more hype. He really does to me. Barrett Jones on the third team for Alabama, I thought that was a good call by them. Again, maybe the most decorated offensive lineman or one of them in history. And so I think that's a good call by them. I'll tell you, who is there somebody, first of all, that you think got left off?
I don't know. I mean, I actually could make – I'm not real – I mean, Tommy Frazier.
He makes third team, which –
Third team. I think he probably could – I would probably invert some of these. Tebow would be 1 for me, Frazier 2, and then if you want to put Staubach there 3. But I'm trying to think of maybe some more just great collegiate quarterbacks over the time. And
well, it's funny because it seems like they penalize quarterbacks who didn't win championships. But the other guys, I mean, Bo Jackson didn't win a national championship, but Peyton Manning didn't win one. But I'd take Peyton Manning over Roger Staubach.
now that okay, yeah.
So we'll get back. I want to talk more about this. Is there anybody on Auburn or Alabama's team now that you think may make this list in 10, 15 years? We're going to take a break. We'll be back in just a minute more at Saturday Sports Countdown.
6.
Welcome back to Saturday Sports Countdown. Was that good?
No,
I can never tell.
Bootsy would be impressed.
Yeah, it's not bad. Welcome back to Saturday Sports Countdown. Luke Robinson along with Scott Hardy here at JR Sports Bar and Grill. Going over it because I got one final thing I want us to talk about. I think this probably should have led the show with this because I think it would have given us a lot of interaction. But I want to go back to this Football Writers Anniversary 75th All-American team. Is there anybody from the current Auburn or Alabama team that you could see making this list later on?
I gave you my name, and I was semi-serious about it, but I think the thing that's going to hurt Jeremy, which is the same thing that hurts Cam, is I don't think he's going to be there long enough to be able to really have the tenure that you would need to be considered a consistent winner like that. But I'm going to go defensively. I could really see maybe a Byron Cowart potentially, or
okay, maybe I should have prefaced this. Let's stay within the realm of reality.
Carl Lawson.
Well, I mean, first of all, okay, if you had mentioned, I guess it is difficult right now for Auburn because most of their younger guys are relatively unproven. And, you could, while Carl Lawson has a big name, you go back to his stats from his freshman year, and it was a nice freshman year, but it wasn't a world breaker. I mean, Myles Garrett had a much better freshman year last year for A&M. And then, of course, he's coming off an injury. Byron Cowart hadn't played yet. He's not even a starter yet.
I would have said, okay, just Reese Dismukes probably has been the best player Auburn's had outside of Cam.
He won the
last 5 years. I mean, that's probably the best player we've had.
And I don't think he'll make this list. There may be even other reasons he doesn't make this list, but I think that he would be a good candidate. That's somebody I can.
I have to just give you a hard time. But, yeah, truthfully, from the standpoint of what he was able to do for such a long time for your freshman, that probably would be the person I go with. But I don't know. I still think Cam gets such a bad rap compared to Tebow just because he didn't do it as long. But if he comes back, I mean,
listen. Cam and Tebow. I think first of all, they both won national championships. Tebow won a couple of them. They both won Heismans. They're both dynamic. They both changed the way we look at the SEC. All those things. But one of the things you say a bad rap, I mean, because there's no rap you can give Tim Tebow. He is pristine. He is squeaky clean. Cam Newton he's getting in fights in camp now, and he's ended up marrying a stripper that has basically blackmailed him. I mean, I'm sorry. There's a personal life thing in here, and we don't have to enjoy it. We don't have to like the fact that it is involved, but I'm sure it is involved. And you may like the fight thing, but it doesn't happen in the NFL a lot. I think it doesn't happen in the NFL a lot for a reason.
But, I mean, you don't have 6'5", 250 guys. That's the type of – that's a different type of quarterback. Now, obviously, you wouldn't – he's not Aaron Rodgers and he's not Brady or Manning, but the importance of his team, he is the same thing, and they just paid him $50 million. So, obviously, I know they didn't want that. But I kind of do like the fact that he's got a little toughness to him. But – in reality, I probably would go Cam, Manziel, Tebow, in my from just what they were able to do in the SEC. And Johnny didn't win, so that kind of takes him out of the conversation. But for what he was able to do individually for a team, that team is easily a 4-8 team, 5-7 without him. And so I think that he gets kind of the nod over some of the other guys. But I love Tebow. I thought Tebow was the greatest thing ever until number 2.
And I'm with you. I think there's no doubt you put Tim Tebow on this list for a lot of reasons. First of all, he embodies everything you want in a football player. Cam Newton, again, for as far as the winner goes, I know Auburn fans love him and think he was wrongfully accused and all this thing, but I think most of the world believes, okay, something went on. We don't know what, but there's something that's going to hold us back because he should have won the Heisman by the largest vote ever, and some people didn't even put him on the ballot. So, I mean, again, I think I get why he's left off of this. I could understand if he was under the under consideration guys, I think he should be. But you look at the quarterbacks here, most of them are squeaky clean guys. I mean, Roger Staubach, never heard a bad thing about him. Same thing with Tim Tebow. Never heard anything bad about Tommy Frazier either. But I could make the argument that I have seen better quarterbacks than all three of those guys.
I guess that's where I was going with it. I mean, but again, those I guess representing eras too. They kind of tried to branch it out. It is the 75th anniversary, so I really can't speak on anything within outside the last 25 years or so. So I really don't know.
And we're biased. I mean, because we didn't get to see Roger Staubach. I mean, we don't know anything about it. We might get to see some grainy footage. Same thing with, everybody having their thing about Kenny Stabler. I mean, I've seen one run in the mud. I mean, that's all I know. I mean, I have to go on your word for it. I mean, I have to go on people's
Matt
word.
Leinart too. Like I think about guys like that who were just
He was
winners.
awesome in college.
Yeah, I mean, like so those are the type of guys, and I think they're a little too fresh in people's mind to be able to use it. But I think looking back, that run that USC had too is almost as impressive as what Alabama was able to do for that time period.
And let me tell you this, Reggie Bush, obviously in the pros, he hadn't been super fantastic. But when he was in college, he was just as dangerous as Tony Dorsett or Bo Jackson or Doak Walker. If you ask me, when he got his hands on the ball, he was shot out of a cannon half the time.
I would have loved to have had Pete Carroll stay, though, at USC.
And see what happens.
And would have, you'd have Meyer, you'd have Saban, you'd have him, and just see what – I mean, it would be so much fun to see that. And so he's doing an excellent job. And it does show you what type of coach he is. But I don't know.
But let me go back to a guy I think could make this list from Alabama and be on this list. J.K. Scott. J.K. Scott, without it, and again, I'm going to stay in the confines of reality because I have seen him and I've seen what he did. Grantland.com just did an article on him, and it makes me almost hope that Jake Coker is our starting quarterback just so we can go 3 and out and I can watch J.K. Scott punt. I mean, he is the best punter I think we've ever had, and I've only seen him 1 year, and that's all I need to see. I mean, sometimes you can just see greatness, and the kid, he's not going to make the tackle. If somebody's coming right at him, he's not going to tackle him. And I don't want him to. Get out of the way. You're more valuable. Let them score 7 points. We need you. Don't get hurt. He takes punting to a whole new level. And it all sounds so silly, but if Alabama had come back and completed that Hail Mary against Ohio State last year, it obviously fell incomplete. Ohio State wins championship. If Alabama can complete it, go for 2 and win it, guess who the MVP is? J.K. Scott, and it's not close.
Yeah, and again, I wouldn't have thought to say that, but that's a group of my friends. Kyle Graven, he's a big fan of the show. Obsessed with him. He thinks he's one of the top players on the team, which he is. And from an impact standpoint, he probably is. And so when you have a team offensively that early on I could see struggling some until they find their identity, what they're going to do, he's going to play a major part in the success of what Alabama's going to be able to do.
Again, on a team filled with 5 stars and huge, monstrous human beings all dotted across the place, and guys that can run 4 2s and 4 3s and all that other junk. The guy who's the best player on the team looks like he's 12 and a half years old, and he gets carded to go to Burger King. I mean, I'm telling you, and he's the best one there is out there. Well, let's go ahead and take one more break, because when we come back, I want to read this story and just get your thoughts on it. We're going to be back in just a minute with more of the Saturday Sports Countdown. quick segment to wrap the show up. I want to send this little story out there as we leave and just give you something to think about. In Brandon, Mississippi, a judge ordered that the band cannot play at halftime. And the reason he ordered that they cannot play at halftime is because the band had planned on playing, among other songs, How Great Thou Art. Now, Scott, I have no problem saying that, look, I'm not darkening the church door every single Sunday. I'm not going to pretend that I am the most religious person out there. I have no problem going that far. But, I think if we crossed some lines here. I mean, we gotten kind of nuts with all this because, quite frankly, it's a high school band in a small southern community. Somebody really is going to have a problem with the band playing How Great They Art.
I mean,
How Great Thou Art. Sorry.
Yeah, I mean, this is just and this coming off the heels too of the Chet Williams situation going on with Auburn. So there's just a lot of national attention that is getting drawn to this right now. And so hopefully that changes. I mean, honestly, I'm with you. It's not necessarily saying the most religious person, but if you want to do, I don't see how that's a problem at all. I mean, compared to some of the songs that they could be playing, I mean, so it's fine. I mean, so it's a catch-22 there of what you want to do. So I think we have gotten so sensitive as a country toward anything that if you're offended by this, then automatically then that needs to be taken out.
You can go out there and play Stanky Leg, but you can't play How Great Thou Art. I mean, come on. I mean, really, it is so nuts to me, and that it's permeated these high schools now. I mean, I'm usually one that is more to the center about this. There's freedom of religion, there's freedom from religion, and you walk a tightrope sometimes. But what does this really hurt? And it doesn't. The Chet Williams thing, same deal. Honestly, how can you possibly have a problem with a guy who is trying to help guide students who seek him? He may come to him and say, look, if you want to talk, I'm here to talk. But he doesn't say, you're coming in here and you're doing prayer. And if you don't do prayer, we're revoking your scholarship. If he did that, I'd have a problem with it. But he doesn't do that. And I don't think any school in the country does that.
No, and I mean, first off, chaplains are just a part of this, been a part of football forever, or most sports in general. But I mean, I remember talking with El Toro and some other people, Mike Goggins, who remember that played on the team. And they love Chet. There's not. I mean, nobody that I've encountered doesn't love Chet. Joe McClellan, who handles the sideline duties for Gus Malzahn as his protector, he's the same way. Loves Chet. So I mean, again, he has had some people kind of come at him before. So this could be somewhat of an agenda, a targeted agenda. But again, I think we've just kind of gotten so sensitive to everything that we've gotten kind of soft.
The judge who ordered this, Judge Reeves, said the district continued to promote Christianity during school hours after it agreed to stop. He fined the district $7,500, and the school was worried that if they played that song, they may be fined another $10,000. Yeah, I'm sure the school system just has $10,000 laying around because all these school systems are flush with cash. It just is so irritating to me. But that's going to do it for the Saturday Sports Countdown. Scott, thanks so much for being up here, and we will see you again next Saturday.
Clear.